In the third year of their marriage, Daniel Hayes changed the locks on their house. I stood in the rain calling him. He was celebrating a new female colleague's birthday, his voice still carrying a laugh. The lock broke, so I swapped it out. Forgot to tell you. What about the key? There was a second of silence on the other end, then a soft female voice came through. Emma, I have the spare key. The phone rang for a long time before he picked up. It was noisy on his end. People clapping, someone singing happy birthday, the clink of glasses. Daniel's voice cut through the noise. Emma, what's up? I stared at the lock. I can't get into the house. He paused, then said, Oh, I changed the lock. My fingers were stiff with cold. The umbrella handle slipped, and rain hit my shoulder. When did you change it? This afternoon. Why didn't you tell me? I forgot. He said it lightly, as casually as forgetting to buy soy sauce. Someone on the other end called out, Daniel, come cut the cake. A girl's voice, sweet, with a deliberately drawn-out lilt. I recognized it. Chloe Morgan, the new intern at Daniel's company. She'd graduated 2 months ago and was constantly texting him. Her computer was broken. A client yelled at her. Someone was following her outside her rented apartment. Every time, Daniel said, She's just a young girl, new to Seattle. It's tough for her. And I believed him. I even bought her cold medicine, helped her revise her resume, and the first time she came over for dinner, I gave her the sweet and sour ribs, Daniel's favorite dish. That day, Chloe bit her chopsticks and said, Emma, you're so nice. No wonder Daniel always says you're the most understanding. At the time, the words just fell off. Now, they surfaced through the rain and stabbed into my eardrums. I asked, Where's the new key? Daniel said, I have one on me. I'm at the front door. I can't leave right now. It's Chloe's birthday. All the coworkers are here. Rain dripped from the tip of my umbrella, wetting the hallway floor. What about the spare key? Silence on the line. 1 second. 2. Then Chloe's voice came through the receiver, as if she'd leaned in close. Emma, I have the spare key. My hand tightened around the phone. She went on. Daniel was worried my place wasn't safe, so he told me to stay at your place tonight. He helped me pick out the lock, too. Don't be mad at him. I didn't say anything. She paused, her voice softening. Emma, you're so understanding. You don't mind, do you? The rain hammered against the umbrella, a dense, relentless patter. I saw my shoes soaked through, my pant legs clinging to my calves, the cold burrowing into my bones. Daniel took the phone back, his voice a little annoyed. Emma, just go wait at the coffee shop downstairs. I'll be back as soon as this wraps up. I asked, why does she have a spare key to our house? She's being followed. She's really shaken up. I just wanted to give her some peace of mind. Giving her peace of mind means locking me out. Don't make it sound so ugly. His voice dropped. That was his usual tone. Every time I expressed discomfort, he'd turn it back on me like this. You know Chloe's in a bad place right now. She has no family in Seattle. If I don't help her, who will? I looked up at the door number, 1602. The digits I'd wiped clean countless times, now gleaming with rainwater. I said, Daniel, this is my home. He breathed in sharply, then let out a laugh. Emma, don't make a scene. Make a scene. I stood in the cold rain, holding an old key that couldn't open the door, listening to him celebrate another girl's birthday, and he said I was making a scene. Someone on the other end shouted, Daniel, your wife checking up on you? Daniel's voice moved away, like he'd covered the receiver. But I still heard it. He said, Don't worry, she won't mind. Those words fell colder than the rain. Just last night, I stayed up until 2 in the morning organizing client proposals for him, yet he spent the night comforting Chloe. For 3 years, I helped him build his business, took care of the household, and never once asked for a full anniversary. Turns out, my being understanding just made it easier for him to cross the line again and again. On the phone, Daniel kept talking. Find a place to get out of the rain first. Don't stand at the door. I'll come back later to let you in. I looked at the key in my hand. The old key's teeth were worn smooth and shiny, marks left from the countless times I'd unlocked that door. Suddenly, I let go. The key hit the ground with a sharp clink. Daniel asked, "What was that sound?" I bent down to pick it up, my fingertips touching the cold concrete floor. Nothing. Then be good and wait downstairs. I closed my umbrella, rainwater streaming down its tip onto the floor. Don't bother. He didn't catch it. What? Daniel, I'm not waiting anymore. Someone on the other end of the line called him over to make a wish. He said, "Don't say things in anger. We'll talk later." I hung up. The screen went dark, reflecting my soaked face. The hallway was left with only the sound of dripping water, my breathing, and the smell of cooking drifting through the crack of a neighbor's door. I stood there for a long time. I wanted to pound on the door, but my hand stopped halfway up. I thought about calling the police, my fingertip hovering over the dial pad, then stopping. It wasn't that I couldn't get in. It was that I suddenly didn't want to. I opened a ride-hailing app, set the destination to a nearby hotel, then changed the address to Rachel Parker's apartment. Rachel was my college roommate and a family lawyer. When the car pulled up downstairs, I didn't look back at that door. The rain bleached the streetlights in the apartment complex white. I stepped through a puddle, mud splattering onto my pant legs. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Asterisk, don't be difficult. Wait for me to get back. Asterisk, I stared at those words, my fingers numb with cold, but I typed back steadily. Asterisk, divorce. Asterisk, when Rachel opened the door, her hair was still clipped with a sharp clip, a jacket thrown over her pajamas. She saw me drenched from head to toe, and her face immediately darkened. Who did this? I set my bag down by the door, water dripping from my clothes onto the floor. Daniel changed the locks on the house and gave the key to Chloe. Rachel's expression shifted. She didn't ask who Chloe was. She just turned, grabbed a towel, and pushed me into the bathroom. Take a shower first. We'll talk after. As the hot water hit my shoulders, I realized my hands were shaking. It wasn't the cold. It was my body finally reacting, pulling up that suppressed ache bit by bit. I pressed my forehead against the tile, the sound of water filling my ears. My phone sat on the sink counter, buzzing nonstop. Daniel called 3 times. I didn't answer. When the 4th call came, Rachel asked from outside the door, "Want to take it?" I turned off the water and said, "Put it on speaker." The call connected, Daniel's voice laced with alcohol. "Emma, where are you?" Rachel glanced at me. I walked out drying my hair, sat down on the couch, and said, "At a friend's place." "You actually left?" "Yeah." "Didn't I tell? Are you really going to divorce me over this?" I watched the water droplets slide down the side of the cup. "Do you remember when you said the key was only for family?" There was a pause on the line. That was just a joke back then. I let out a small laugh, the corners of my mouth pulling painfully. I took it seriously. Daniel's tone grew impatient. "Emma, you're not stable right now. I'm not going to argue with you. I'll pick you up tomorrow. Don't bother. You have to be like this?" Rachel sat beside me, arms crossed, her gaze sharp enough to cut. I said, "Tomorrow at 10, I'm coming back to get my documents." "What documents?" "Marriage certificate, property and loan papers, financial records." Daniel scoffed. "You're really doing this?" I didn't answer. He went on, "Emma, don't forget, who gave you the chance to join the project team when my company was starting out? If it weren't for me, where would you be today?" Rachel nearly threw her cup. I held her hand back. I thought about how, after leaving the firm, I built my career project by project. Daniel only remembered the opportunity he gave me, but forgot that during the toughest times of his startup, it was my salary that kept his company afloat. I said, "Daniel, only now do I realize how much you've helped me." His voice softened a little. "You know that, don't you? Married couples don't hold grudges overnight. Don't pull that Rachel crap, always talking about divorce." Rachel let out a cold laugh. "Mr. Hayes, my crap is specifically for self-righteous types." When Daniel heard her voice, his tone immediately turned harsh. "Rachel, stay out of my family's business." I set my cup back down on the coffee table. "She doesn't need to get involved. Starting tonight, she's my lawyer." The line went completely silent on the other end. After a few seconds, Daniel said, "Emma, don't regret this." I hung up. Rachel tossed the dry clothes at me and muttered, "Piece of shit." I sank into the couch, my eyes burning, but not a single tear fell. Rachel opened her laptop and said, "The marital property is under both your names, and the mortgage was paid jointly after marriage. That can be split. Your pre-marriage apartment is still in your name, right?" "Yeah, it's rented out. Lease ends next month." "Good. Stay at my place for now. Tomorrow I'll go with you to get your stuff. Tonight, back up everything, bank transfers, chat logs, and any footage from your door camera." I started backing up the transfers, chats, and surveillance footage. I also came across the photo Chloe had posted the first time she came over. Daniel had commented on her Instagram, calling me "can't sit still." 3 flippant words that erased all my years of effort. At 2 in the morning, Daniel texted again. "Chloe has a fever. I'm not coming back tonight. Don't make a scene." Then Chloe sent me a photo. In it, Daniel sat by the bed, holding a thermometer, looking down at her. She showed half her face, eyes glistening, with the caption, "Emma, I'm sorry." Daniel told me not to be scared, that he'd stay with me. I stared at the photo for 10 seconds. Then I saved it. Rachel leaned in, her lips curling coldly. She's more eager than I thought. I turned my phone face down on the table. "Good." Rachel looked at me. I said, "The more eager she is, the more mistakes she'll make." The next morning at 10, I was back at 1602. Rachel came with me. When the elevator doors opened, the hallways smelled of disinfectant, and the floor still had the gray streaks from last night's rain drying. I walked to the door and rang the bell. It opened quickly. Chloe stood there. She was wearing my slippers and had on Daniel's white shirt, the top 2 buttons undone, sleeves covering her hands. She saw me, hesitated for a moment, then bit her lip. "Emma, you're here." I looked at the slippers on her feet. I'd bought them last winter. There was a small coffee stain on the toe. She followed my gaze, then quickly pulled her feet back. My clothes got wet last. A woman's jacket was draped over the couch. The kitchen sink was piled with dishes, and a torn piece of gift wrap lay on the floor. This was the home I wiped until it shone every day. Now it looked like someone had deliberately trashed it. Daniel came out of the master bedroom, his shirt wrinkled, his expression sour. "Why did you bring Rachel?" I didn't look at him. I headed straight for the study. "I'm getting my documents." He reached out to block me. "Emma, that's enough." Rachel stepped forward. "Mr. Hayes, watch your hands." He glared at her. "This is my home." I stopped. "It's my home too." His jaw tightened. "Do you have to make this so ugly?" I turned to face him. "Was it ugly when you changed the locks?" Chloe whispered, "Emma, it's all my fault. Don't blame Daniel. If you want to yell at someone, yell at me." I looked at her. Tears hung in her eyes, her shoulders hunched, but her hand gripped the doorframe, her body blocking half the master bedroom entrance. I said, "Move." She flinched. "Emma, please don't be like this. You're scaring me." Daniel immediately stepped in front of her. "Emma, what are you trying to do to her?" He stood in front of Chloe, the way he used to protect me, blocking me from entering my own bedroom. In that moment, I finally understood. He wasn't capable of defending a wife. It's just that the one he defended now had changed. Rachel pulled out her phone. "Mr. Hayes, the wife has the right to retrieve her personal documents and belongings. If you obstruct her, I'll call the police right now." Daniel's face darkened. Chloe tugged at his sleeve. "Daniel, don't fight with Emma because of me." At those words, Daniel's gaze toward me turned even colder. "Emma, look at yourself now. Chloe is backing down, and you're still pushing." She backed down to the point of wearing my slippers, sleeping in my bed, and taking my keys. Chloe's face went pale. Daniel frowned. "She had a fever last night. I let her sleep in the master bedroom, and I slept on the couch. Did I ask you?" He was cut off. I walked into the master bedroom. The sheets had been changed. On the nightstand sat earrings that weren't mine. I took the marriage certificate, property documents, passport, and bank cards. Daniel kept insisting that nothing had happened between him and Chloe. I only asked him why. In his eyes, Being locked out of my own home while she held the keys and slept in my bed were just trivial matters. From the doorway, Chloe called out that she felt dizzy. Daniel immediately turned around. In that moment, the last thread of hesitation inside me snapped. I opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. Daniel snapped back to attention, his face changing. "You're really moving out?" I folded a few pieces of clothing inside.
Yeah.
He slammed his hand down on the lid. "Emma, don't regret this. If you walk out today, don't come crawling back to me." I stopped and looked at his hand on the suitcase. "Let go." I said, "Let go." "Daniel." He met my eyes. The wind from the hallway blew in, carrying the dampness after the rain. I turned back to Daniel.
No.
"I'll have my lawyer send you the divorce papers." As the door closed behind me, I heard the sound of a glass shattering inside. I didn't stop. After I sent the divorce papers, Daniel first posted in our mutual friends group that I was emotionally unstable. I simply stated one fact. He changed the locks on our home, gave the new keys to a female coworker, and left his wife waiting in the rain outside the door. No one in the group tried to persuade me to be understanding anymore. Then he called to accuse me of fighting over the property, the car, and the post-marital appreciation of the company. I reminded him that when he used my salary to save his company, he said we were one as a couple. I asked him to leave, but Chloe followed him in to deliver documents. Around her neck was a necklace worth $2,500, exactly what Daniel had bought using our joint credit card, listed as a client gift. I sent the screenshot of the bill to Rachel. Chloe denied it, but Daniel instead accused me of embarrassing him. I threw the coffee he brought into the trash and asked the client lead to have them removed. As Chloe turned to leave, she deliberately fell into Daniel's arms. He instinctively caught her, then asked me if I was satisfied. I said, "You really need a pair of glasses. You can't see people clearly and you can't see yourself either." The client lead formally asked them to leave. Before Chloe walked out the door, she looked back at me. The weakness in her eyes already turned to venom. I sat back down and opened my proposal. My palms were sweaty. The mouse almost slipped. The client lead asked quietly, "Ms. Reed, do you need a break?" I shook my head.
No.
"Let's continue." After the meeting, Rachel messaged me. "Got the necklace bill. Beautiful. Also, the building management said Chloe went to your place again yesterday. She had the keys." I asked, "Is there video?" "Yes." My phone screen was lit. I stood outside the bathroom stall and heard Chloe's voice, lowered, coming from inside. "Don't worry, Daniel is just scared by her for now. She won't leave him. She's not that tough." A woman like her, used to serving men, where else can she go without Daniel? I raised my hand and pressed the record button. From inside the door came another woman's laughter. "Are you really going to take her place?" Chloe snorted. "What else? His company is about to launch an IPO. I've been with him through the emotional roller coaster. Why should Emma get to be the wife?" I gripped my phone, my knuckles tightening inch by inch. The faucet dripped, and in the mirror my gaze darkened. The person inside asked again, "But he said he only sees you as a sister."
Chloe laughed.
"What a man says doesn't matter. What matters is who he makes exceptions for. He already gave me the keys. What else is missing?" I saved the recording and sent it to Rachel. Rachel quickly replied with 3 words. "Blow her up." I told him it was never just about a key. It was that he knew I was outside the door and still chose to cut cake with another woman. He knew I would be hurt and still assumed I wouldn't care. 10 minutes later, he sent a photo of his hand scratched by the old keys, reminding me that I used to hate seeing him hurt. I replied with a photo of him sitting by Chloe's bedside. "You used to hate seeing me get caught in the rain." The next day, his colleague called to say he had a fever and kept calling my name. I told them to contact emergency services or Chloe. Daniel's lawyer sent a formal letter accusing me of transferring assets and damaging his reputation. Rachel immediately filed for divorce, requested the apartment surveillance footage, and listed the necklace, hotel, cake, and other joint property expenses. Daniel then used his mother's blood pressure to pressure me into backing down. I just told him to take her to the hospital, no longer taking on the responsibility of being his son for him. He said I had changed. I replied, "Yes, you changed me yourself." The line went quiet. He didn't want to hear me mention that lock anymore because that lock had started to bite him. He finally realized it wasn't a detail I had blown out of proportion, but a knife he had handed over himself. In the photo, her hand had an 4-needle with the caption, "Some care shouldn't be craved, but when people are at their most vulnerable, they always want to hold onto a little light." Someone commented, "Hugs." She replied, "Don't blame anyone. I'm not worthy." Half an hour later, Daniel reposted it with the caption, "Please don't hurt innocent people." I stared at the screen, the nausea rising in my stomach again. Rachel saw it too. She's trying to whitewash herself as the innocent little flower bullied by the wife. Sure enough, the next morning, my work email received several anonymous messages. "Ms. Reed, I heard you bullied a young girl during your marriage and forced your husband to blacklist an intern. With your character, are you fit to do spatial design? Do your clients know how bad your personal ethics are?" I saved each email. The client manager also called me, speaking tactfully. "Ms. Reed, there are some rumors online that your family situation is complicated." I said, "Give me 1 day. I'll handle it cleanly." The client paused. "All right, I'll wait." After hanging up, I opened the bathroom recording. Chloe's voice came through the phone. "He already gave me the keys. What else is missing?" Rachel stood behind me. "Release it now." I shook my head. Still missing something. What? I opened Chloe's Instagram and saw her latest location tag. Daniel's company pre-IPO investor cocktail party, tonight at 7 p.m., with partners and investors all there. She was wearing that necklace, sitting next to Daniel. Caption, "Thank you for showing me a bigger world." I handed my phone to Rachel. Missing an audience. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You're going?" I grabbed my jacket. Doesn't she want everyone to know? Crystal chandeliers made the hall bright. Champagne glasses were stacked on long tables, and the air was mixed with the smell of alcohol and perfume. When I arrived, Daniel was giving a speech on stage. He was wearing a black suit, standing tall, his voice steady. "Thank you all for being with Hayes Technology through today. In the future, we will continue to stay true to our original mission." Original mission. I stood at the back of the crowd and almost laughed. Chloe sat in the front row, wearing a silver-white dress, the necklace around her neck glaring under the lights. When she saw me, the corner of her mouth curled up, but she quickly lowered her head, her fingers gripping the hem of her dress. Daniel on stage followed her gaze. His voice paused for half a second. Many people in the hall turned their heads. I was wearing a black trench coat, holding my bag, standing quietly at the door. After Daniel finished his speech, he quickly walked over to me. "What are you doing here?" I said, "Attending the party." "Who invited you?" "Your company sent out a spouse invitation." His face stiffened. That invitation had been sent to my email a month ago, signed, Mrs. Hayes. Back then, they needed my status to save face. Now they find my presence inconvenient. Chloe walked over with a drink, her voice soft. "Emma, don't misunderstand. This is a company party. If you have something to say, can we talk about it at home?" I looked at her. "When you call me Emma, doesn't it make you sick?" People around gasped. Chloe's eyes quickly welled up. Daniel stepped in front of her. "Emma, do you have to make a scene here?" I took out my phone and lit up the screen. "Making a scene?" He warned in a low voice. "Don't push me." I asked, "Push you to do what?" "Push you to admit you changed the locks and lock me out? Push you to admit you used marital assets to buy her that necklace? Push you to admit you gave her the keys to my home, let her wear my slippers, sleep in my bedroom?" The surroundings fell completely silent. Someone looked at Chloe's necklace. She hurriedly covered her neck. "No, that's not true, Emma. Why are you slandering me?" She cried with perfect angles, her chin slightly raised, tears hanging at the corners of her eyes without falling. Daniel's face turned ashen. "Enough." I said, "Not enough." I handed the USB flash drive to a hotel staff member. "Please connect this to the screen." Daniel grabbed my wrist. "Emma," his grip was strong. My wrist bones went numb. I looked down at his hand. "Let go."
He didn't.
If you show that today, we're really done. I looked up at him. You think we're not already done? His fingers trembled. At that moment, a hint of panic finally appeared in his eyes. Not because he hurt me, but because he was about to be humiliated. Rachel stepped out from the side, holding up her phone. Mr. Hayes let go.
There are so many people here.
Don't make me call the police. Daniel clenched his teeth and released me. What a man says doesn't matter. What matters is who he'll break the rules for. He gave me the keys already. What else is there? Every word landed in the room. Chloe's face went pale. The glass in her hand hit the carpet, the wine spreading into a dark stain. Daniel stood frozen, his eyes locked on her. What did you say? Chloe took a step back. Daniel, it's not me. That's not my voice. She edited it. Rachel spoke coldly. We can provide the original files, timestamps, and location. Would you like an authentication, Miss Morgan? Chloe's lips trembled. All eyes in the room pressed down on her. Suddenly, she lunged at Daniel, grabbing his sleeve. Daniel, I just like you too much. I didn't mean to. I was just so afraid of losing you. Daniel's body went rigid. I watched him. He finally understood that the weakling he'd been protecting all this time was someone who used tears as a hook. But that didn't make him innocent. He turned to look at me, his Adam's apple bobbing. Emma, I didn't know. I asked. Didn't know what? His voice was dry. Didn't know she was lying to me. I stepped closer to him. She lied to you about changing the locks? His lips moved. She lied to you about giving her the keys? His face went paler. She lied to you about saying I wouldn't mind in public? His shoulders slumped. I slapped a piece of paper against his chest. The divorce filing receipt. Daniel, you weren't deceived. You were enjoying it.
He froze.
I said, you enjoyed her dependence on you. You enjoyed me backing down. You enjoyed playing the good guy while making me swallow the knife. No one in the room spoke. Daniel looked down at the paper, his fingers slowly tightening. The paper crumpled, its edges scraping against his palm. He suddenly bent over, as if punched in the stomach, his breathing ragged and chaotic. Emma. I took a step back. He looked up, his eyes frighteningly red. I was wrong. Chloe was still crying. Daniel, don't believe her. She just wants to destroy me. Daniel yanked his hand away from her. Shut up. Chloe fell to the floor, her dress a mess. I glanced at her, then back at Daniel. Sort it out between yourselves. I turned and walked away. Behind me came the dull thud of knees hitting the carpet. Daniel shouted, Emma, don't go. I didn't look back. The video from the party spread through the circle the next day. Chloe was suspended and placed under internal investigation. The costs of the necklace, hotel, and gifts were all listed in the financial audit. Daniel's company investors also found out. For a founder about to take a company public, personal ethics issues, blurred financial boundaries, and dragging family drama into a business party, everyone had to reassess the risk. When Daniel came to see me, it was just getting dark. I had moved back into the small apartment I owned before marriage. After the tenant moved out, I changed the locks myself. One new key went to Rachel, one to my mom. Daniel stood outside the door, ringing the bell for a long time. I answered the video doorbell. On the screen, he had stubble on his chin, bloodshot eyes, still wearing the same suit from yesterday, his tie crooked. When he saw the camera, he leaned in immediately. Emma, I know you're there. I pressed the talk button. Something? His voice was hoarse. Let me see you. Not convenient. Just a few words. I looked at the screen. Say it. He raised a hand and pressed it against the doorframe, his knuckles white. Chloe's been suspended. I've made her return everything. I'll handle the lies she told me. I asked. And then? Then we start over. I almost laughed. He rushed on. I know this isn't something that can be fixed with one sentence. I'll make it up to you, the house, the car, even some company shares. Just drop the lawsuit. Are you trying to win me back? Or save the company? He froze. The hallway light was on, making his face look pale and gray. Both. That was the most honest he'd been in a while. I said, then go home. He panicked. Emma? I was about to hang up when he suddenly reached into his suit pocket and pulled out the old set of keys. The little rabbit keychain had been cleaned, but the chipped ear was still missing a piece. He pressed the keys up to the camera. I found them. I looked at that set of keys, and my heart gave a tug. Just one. Daniel's voice trembled. Do you still remember? The day we moved into 1602, the elevator was broken, and I carried you up 16 flights of stairs. You called me an idiot, and I said I'd never let you get tired again. I remember. I still remember that night when we had no bed at home, sitting on the floor eating instant noodles, and Daniel gave me the only fried egg. His eyes were only on me back then. But people aren't old photographs. They can't live on the past. I said, I remember. A flicker of light appeared in his eyes. I continued, and I remember you made me wait outside the door. That flicker went out. His throat tightened a few times. I really didn't think you'd leave that day. Because I never used to leave. Emma, my mistake was taking your kindness for granted. His voice began to crack. I wanted to open it, but my fingers froze. Asterisk, if I open this door, he'll cry, he'll kneel, he'll bring up all the past. Asterisk, asterisk, but I can't spend the rest of my life burying myself in his belated remorse. Asterisk, the sound outside grew softer. Finally, he slid down against the door. On the doorbell camera, he sat on the floor, leaning against the door, clutching an old key, repeating my name over and over. I picked up my phone and dialed the building management. Hello, there's someone lingering outside my door for a long time. Could you please send security up? 10 minutes later, security came to persuade him to leave. Daniel looked up at the camera, his eyes shattered and empty. Emma, are you really this cruel? I pressed the intercom button. Daniel, I'm not cruel. I'm just finally giving back to you the way you treated me. His lips trembled, unable to speak for a long time. When security helped him up, his legs gave way, and he nearly collapsed. I turned off the screen. The room was quiet. The sound of the new lock clicking into place was then the pen tip touched the paper. The ink pressed into the fibers, one stroke to the end. A week before the court hearing, Chloe posted a long article online, portraying herself as a girl harmed by her married boss and his wife, even stealing someone else's pregnancy test photo to imply she was pregnant. Rachel contacted the original poster and the platform to preserve the evidence, quickly proving the photo was fake. To clear his name, Daniel had to submit all his chat records with Chloe. One passage was crystal clear. Chloe actively asked for a place to escape to, and Daniel personally replied, promising to change the lock the next day and give her the spare key. Seeing this, I was completely certain he wasn't momentarily deceived but consciously removed me from home. On the day of the hearing, the weather was beautiful. Maple leaves covered the ground outside the county family court, crunching crisply underfoot. Daniel arrived earlier than me. He saw me and immediately stood up. In just a few weeks, he had lost weight, his suit hung loosely, his eyes sunken, his lips pale. Emma. I nodded. Mr. Hayes. The title stung him. Do you have to call me that? I said, it's appropriate. He smiled bitterly, rubbing his sleeve. I didn't sleep at all last night. I didn't respond. He looked at me, his eyes reddening. I restored 1602 to how it used to be. The dining table, the curtains, your bookshelf, I brought them all back. My things aren't there. I know. He lowered his head. I just wanted you to go back and see. I looked toward the entrance of the county family court. No need. He hurriedly said, I won't let anyone else into our home again. I'll only give the key to you, I promise. I turned to look at him. Daniel, I changed the lock too. He froze. I said, the new keys are with my mom and Rachel. The color drained from his face. I gave him back the words he once said to me. You were right. Keys are only for family. He swayed, steadying himself against the wall. The court proceedings went faster than I expected. The evidence was complete, the assets clear. Daniel's lawyer tried several times to shift the focus to the reasons for the breakdown of the marriage, but Rachel blocked every attempt. Daniel hardly spoke from start to finish. When the judge asked if he agreed to the divorce, he looked up at me. I didn't look away. His eyes were terribly red, his Adam's apple bobbed, and it took him a long moment to force out the words. I don't agree. The judge asked for his reasons. He stared at the table, his fingers clenched so tightly they turned white. I still love her. Those 4 words fell, and the courtroom fell silent for a moment. In the past, I probably would have cried. Now, I just felt absurd. Rachel submitted supplementary materials, her tone steady. During the marriage, the defendant changed the locks of the shared residence without the plaintiff's consent, gave the keys to a third party outside the marriage, preventing the plaintiff from entering the residence normally. There were also multiple abnormal expenditures from joint assets. There is factual basis for the breakdown of the relationship. The judge reviewed the materials. Daniel suddenly spoke up. I admit it. Everyone looked at him. His voice was very low. I admit I was selfish. Admit I took her compromises for granted. Admit I hurt her. He raised his hands to cover his face, his shoulders beginning to tremble. I wasn't deceived. I was just vain. I liked being needed, liked being admired, and I took advantage of her love for me, thinking she would never leave. His voice leaked through his fingers, broken beyond recognition. I was wrong. The judge reminded him to control his emotions. He lowered his hands, tears already streaming down to his chin. I'm willing to divide the assets as she requests. She can have the house, the car, and the company's appreciation during the marriage can be calculated as it should.
He looked at me.
But can I beg you not to erase me so completely from your life? I looked at him. He had finally told the truth. But the truth had come too late. So late it could only serve as a footnote in the judgment. I said, no. Daniel's gaze completely collapsed. He leaned back in his chair, his lips moving without making a sound. Later, mediation failed, and the proceedings continued. When I walked out of the county family court, Daniel caught up to me, calling my name from the bottom of the steps. Emma. I stopped. He held a supplementary page of the divorce agreement, the paper deeply creased from his grip. The wind swept up maple leaves, brushing past the tips of his shoes. He suddenly knelt before me. His knees hit the stone steps with a heavy thud. People around us glanced over. Rachel frowned, moving to step in front of me. I gently held her back. Daniel looked up at me, tears rolling from the corners of his eyes. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm only asking you not to hate me. I looked at this man I had once fought so hard to hold on to. Are you available to discuss the plan this afternoon? I replied, yes. Rachel walked beside me and asked, where to? I looked at the traffic on the road. First, let's eat. Then, we'll discuss the project. Not hurting anymore? I thought about it. There was still a mark on my chest. It hurt when pressed, but it was no longer bleeding. I said, I'm hungry. Rachel laughed. All right, to celebrate your new beginning, I'll treat you to the most expensive meal. I glanced back. Daniel was still kneeling at the bottom of the steps, the paper in his hands rustling in the wind. He saw me look back and abruptly lifted his head. I didn't walk back. I just took the old key from my bag and dropped it into the trash can outside the county family court. The metal hit the bottom with a soft clink. Then I turned and walked into the crowd. This time, the door closed behind me and I didn't look back.